I think it's remarkable how hard it's proven to be to come up with any logically consistent theory of physics which predicts only the universe that we can observe, this spherical region of space from which light has reached us so far during the 13.8 billion years since the Big Bang, and nothing else. Quantum mechanics predicts that reality is even bigger by there being alternative histories unfolding, in a sense, right here. If you turn this around, I think the main reason people have resisted parallel universes is just because they feel it sounds too weird. But I think that's a really, really bad argument, frankly. We can test this. Look what happened. We look at things much smaller than the human scale, and we see particles being in multiple places at once. That's really weird. We look at things going much faster than the human scale, and time slows down. That's pretty weird in my book. So I think the verdict is already in. The reality is weird. And if we are so narrow-minded that we're only going to study theories that we think are not weird, we're never going to find the true theory.
Hi, I'm Steve Boston. I'm the creator and executive producer of Undiscovered. For 43 years, I've been exploring the non-physical aspect of things, so to speak. But we'll get to that later. The two biggest questions in science have always been, how and when did the universe begin, and how and when did human intelligence or consciousness come into being? Now, physicists have made great strides over the years, but they do realize since the time of Einstein and Niels Bohr that there is an unresolved missing link between the behavior of subatomic particles and larger physical objects. For example, a phone, according to Einstein's theory of relativity, can't travel faster than the speed of light. But in quantum physics, the electrons in it can. Now, physicists also say that two electrons, even 1 trillion miles apart, can affect each other's behavior instantaneously. And if this is so, what are the implications of this?
You and I and everything around us is made of these elementary particles, like quarks and electrons. And we've studied in the lab and discovered that they can actually be in multiple places at once. So if your particles are all both here and also there, then you should be able to be in two places at once.
Many tests have shown, mainly the famous double-slit experiment, that the reason subatomic particles can be in two or more places at once is that they don't obey the physical laws of time and space. Now, Dr. Robert Lanza, who's well known for his work in stem cell regeneration, in his book Biocentrism, describes briefly here the inscrutable behavior of subatomic particles.
2 years ago, just a couple years ago, in the very prestigious journal Science, there was an experiment that scientists carried out where they sent particles, little photons, particles of light, into this apparatus. And when it went through to a fork, it had to decide what it was going to do, whether it was going to be a wave or a particle. And then later on, after it passed that fork, there was another fork. And the experimenter could then decide what to do, whether to flip an electronic switch on or off. And when he flipped that switch, then, now in the present, he actually changed what that particle did in the past. So again, the thing is we live in that same world, and that's not the world currently described in the existing paradigm. Space and time as these hard objects just doesn't match up with the facts or the experiments.
There's another oddity about the behavior of subatomic particles. It has been shown that electrons exist in many simultaneous states or probabilities until they are observed. And what scientists have surmised from this is that there are many probable realities, parallel worlds, and other versions of ourselves. Another name for this is the multiverse theory.
When you mention parallel universes, the eyes sort of roll up and you giggle and you say to yourself, this is just silly, this is nuts. However, things have changed now. The paradigm has shifted. The multiverse idea, once thought to be so crazy it only belonged on evening night television, has now become the dominant theory in cosmology. It's unavoidable. You cannot avoid the theory of the multiverse.
One of the exciting prospects about multiverse theory is that it sheds light on some rather notorious difficult problems at the foundations of physics, one of which is time. The universe yesterday is the same kind of object as an alternative universe, as we might call it, today. The flow of time is an emergent property of this thing, and we can't think of the multiverse as being in time. It's more that time is a feature of the multiverse.
So it's well known that little particles end up in two places at once, and big things are made of particles too, so they can also end up in two places at once. So I've always wondered, though, if there's some even more convincing experiment you could make.
So if we are made up of billions of atoms that can be in two or more places at once and travel backwards and forwards in time, then what kind of an experiment could be done that would show or give convincing evidence of this kind of behavior on a human scale and be measured in a laboratory like any other kind of an experiment?
It seemed that I flew up in the air, straight up in the air.
This is beyond my vocabulary, especially in describing this light.
And as my ego and it acquired that realization, they both, in that realm, acquired gravity, and I descended and descended and descended.
Even though I didn't really have a body, I could feel this motion, this swooping, this right over the ocean.
I worked homicide for a lot of years. Some people, again, make claims with no proof at all. And they just what I see and hear. And you're right, those can't be proved. And there was some concern, particularly when I got down where the 28 points, I got to number 20, I'd proven 28, hadn't disproved a single one yet. Now you're getting worried because now I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is true. The clarity, I mean, it was just vivid as this room right now. I mean, I could see, for example, I looked at the paintings, I could see every brush stroke. I could see every brush stroke. I could look around, I could see everything in the room, everything.
You were virtually back in time.
Yeah, it was amazing. But I wasn't ready unless I had absolute 100% proof to throw away my whole belief system. And then you have to you start over and embrace a whole new system. You realize everything you thought about the world is wrong.
So now we come full circle. Is consciousness a byproduct of matter, or is matter a byproduct of consciousness? And why is this important? Because if the billions of atoms that we're made up of have a non-physical consciousness that can propel themselves outside the bounds of time and space, then we should be able to experience that same action.
Consciousness is fundamental in the universe. Deathbed visions, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, past life memories in children. There's a tremendous amount of information out there about non-local consciousness, about all these phenomena, and that's where the science is headed around all of this.
So what does all this mean, and what does this series intend to do? If subatomic particles behave in such a way as to defy known physical laws, and then there was a consciousness behind the creation of matter, as the great physicist Max Planck and Nikola Tesla believed, then it is in this inward direction that the answers to the nature of reality and who we are may lie. We're going to test with predictable and measurable results in laboratories like the Max Planck Institute that mind can indeed be in two or more places at once, travel backwards and forwards in time, and manipulate in other dimensions of reality. There were physicists as far back as the 70s and before that foresaw this direction that many scientists are moving in today. Quantum physics has opened the door to the exploration in this area, and now it's time to step through it.
As a physicist, I would have to say one of the findings is that the mind is no longer limited by the parameters of the body. The person's consciousness and awareness is able to transcend space and time and describe what is going on hundreds or thousands of miles away, or hours or days in the future.
I think the verdict is already in. The reality is weird. And if we are so narrow-minded that we're only going to study theories that we think are not weird, we're never going to find the true theory.